Hi, hello, what is up? Welcome back to the Let's Unpack It podcast. It has been forever and a day since I have sat down and done a podcast because life has just been happening. But you know what? In 2025, I am committed to doing better and honestly making the most of what God has given me. And so if this is your first time listening or watching, and I have never had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is My Unique. You may have known me as Instagram for Believers, but last year Instagram made me change my name. And so it's nice to just introduce myself as My Unique. I'm going to stop talking and jump right into it. If you have not already seen the title of this, a top question that I have been asked since I got engaged was, how did I know he was the one? Now, full disclaimer, I do not believe that there is one person that God has created for one person. I don't necessarily believe in this idea of having quote unquote the one, but I do believe that God gives us people that are meant to help us in this life, that are meant to enhance our lives, to build them up for his kingdom and for his glory. And so it really is cringy when people say like the one, because I have listened to tons of podcasts, gotten advice from a ton of pastors and leaders, and even sat myself with God. And the reality is there is so many incredible people in this world that you can be with. But it's a matter of who you choose to be with, because there's always going to be someone prettier. There's always going to be someone smarter. There's always going to be someone that has something that someone else does not have, but that does not necessarily disqualify them from all the other great things that God has gifted them with. And so going into that, I just wanted to make sure I gave that disclaimer because, again, I don't believe that even as I talk about Sean and, the process of being engaged, getting married and all that stuff, I don't believe that he is necessarily the one, but he is the person that I choose to spend the rest of my life with. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Now, in order to unpack this, how did I know? I have to take you guys way, way back to October 2023. October 23, okay? And so last year, because literally today is New Year's Eve, this time last year, I was the most depressed and anxious I have ever been in my entire life. 2023 was by far one of the worst years of my entire life, and I would never want to go back to it. And I remember in October of 2023, it was my birthday. On my birthday, I didn't want to do anything, just wanted to, get the day over with. And I remember I had a young adult of mine come to me, and she was like, My Unique, I feel like the Lord is telling me, like, this is going to be your year. And I just see birthdays as birthdays. Like, I was not excited about it or anything. I was just like, okay, Lavana, like, continue on, you know what I mean? But she just kept saying, I believe that like God is just really going to do something incredible in the next year. And honestly, I went home thinking about what she said and not thinking much past that. Like, I was just like, no, like, life has been really crappy up until this point. I don't see where it's going to get better. Like, I really don't. And what's crazy is a couple of weeks after my birthday, I was in the kitchen cleaning, and I felt that God gave me this word, seen. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll put a picture of this. But I remember it was October 18th, 2023. And God just kept telling me seen. Like, I just kept hearing that word over and over. And I was super depressed at this time. But I was like, you know what? That might be important for me to go back to later. So I'm just going to journal it. And so I just journaled on one page. All I wrote was seen. And I didn't know what it meant at the time. And so I went and I journaled it because something about it felt different. Like, there was something about this word that God was giving me that felt different. And I remember sitting with the Lord after I was done like cleaning the kitchen or whatever, and I was like, God, I need clarification. Like, why seen? And I specifically wrote this down. Is God said, when you find or get the guy that I have for you, you will be seen. When it's him, you'll know because you will finally feel seen. Now, being seen is something that honestly I've struggled with my whole life. I am a middle child. I come from a big family, one of 9. And so even in general, like growing up, I was always the introverted kid, always the quiet kid, always the one that like, honestly, I never felt like people seen me. It was always someone else that was got the attention or et cetera, et cetera. And so I knew that was a special word that God had given me back in October. Now, fast forward to November. I've talked about this before on several occasions, but after that was in October. Once November came, I felt like God told me that he was going to redeem and restore things in my life. And obviously I've talked about it before, but it was a very specific word that I got on a flight on a flight home from Nashville to California. And God was just like, I'm going to restore you. I'm going to restore your love. I'm going to restore your love for writing. I'm going to restore your love for ministry. Like I wrote down this long list of things God was going to restore. And again, one of those things that God told me was that he was going to restore my hope for like love again. And that also didn't make sense because prior to meeting my now fiance, I was in a situationship for about 3 years, and I'll make another video to kind of unpack what that looked like and the change and all of that. And so I was on and off with this guy for about 3 years, and it just was going nowhere. And so I had no hope that God was going to do anything, if I'm being truthful. But what really changed the game for me, and this is all before Sean, what really changed the game for me was I remember specifically a year ago today, because today is New Year's Eve as I'm filming this. A year ago today, I remember we have our church's annual New Year's Eve service. And again, I remember our church does this thing called Letters to Jesus, where you kind of write a letter to Jesus that you hope to get like mid-year. And I remember writing this letter. And again, I was super depressed, you guys, like super depressed. And I remember writing like, dear God, like, it's been a crappy year. And I used another word. I'll put a picture somewhere. But I have that letter to this day because I was just so not looking forward to 2024. Wasn't looking forward to another year of being depressed, being anxious, like loneliness, like the whole nine. It's all things that I struggled with. And yet God just does what God does best. And so at the end of our New Year's Eve service, I was hanging out in our atrium or a lobby area with a couple of people, and my pastor, he was like, hey, my unique, like, what are your plans tonight? What are you gonna do? And I was like, Pastor Jeremy, I'm going home. Like, I'm going to sleep. And he was like, you're not doing anything fun? Like, you're not going out to like a party to hang out with your friends? And mind you, at this time, I did not really have a lot of friends outside of like church ministry, which I lead, so it's a little bit difficult. Like, I didn't really have friends. I wasn't dating anyone. Like, I was just like, I just want to go home and get this night over with. And he kind of paused, and I will never forget this because I also journaled too. This is why it's important to journal. And so I remember we were kind of just like talking and laughing and whatever. And my pastor looked at me and he said, my unique, I believe this year will be the year of the man. And I started cracking up because I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, I believe like this will be the year that you meet your husband. And I just kind of laughed it off because what the heck, you know what I mean? But if I'm being honest, my pastor is not the type to be like, oh, I'm going to prophesy this into your life, yada, yada. Like, there are very rare moments that like stuff like that is said, but there was something about the way that he said it that I went home and I journaled it. And I remember journaling that night, literally on Christmas Eve. And I was like writing to the Lord, and I'm like, this year has sucked. Like, I can't believe, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember at the end of this note, and I still have a picture of it, so I'll post it, you know, but I remember writing, Pastor Jeremy thinks this will be the year I meet my husband, so I guess we'll see. And so I wrote that down with like this mustard seed hope of like, maybe there's some truth to that. Now, mind you, I have been at this church for about 3.5 years, going on 4 years. So they've known my dating history. We've all been praying for, you know, God would send a husband, that I would focus on ministry. Like, these aren't people that like, it's just like random. You know what I mean? These are people that have seen the ins and outs of my life and know me pretty deeply to be able to speak things into my life. And so I took that and I was like, okay, God, here we go. Now, fast forward. The beginning of the year was definitely rocky because I went through just a cleansing. Like, God really took me through some deep moments. And I remember at the beginning of the year buying a ring because I was not focused on a relationship at all. I didn't care for one. At this point, I've accepted the fact that like, if God has called me to a life of singleness, I want to live it to the fullest without any regrets. I told myself at the beginning of last year, like, I was going to do everything 110% for the kingdom of God. And if I was going to halfway do something, I was not going to do it at all. Like, I had to give God everything I have. And so God really took me through a sanctification process that started last year in September that really kind of lasted to the beginning of the new year, of just like cleaning me from the inside out. I walked through so many different things, but I remember in particular, literally the beginning of the year, buying a ring, and if you've seen me in person, like you've seen it, and if you're watching it on video, you'll see. But I bought this ring from Elevated Faith. It's just a black and gold ring. I really like the design on it, but I really bought it literally at the tip of the new year because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to commit myself to the Lord. That's my focus. I just want to commit myself to the Lord, nothing more, nothing less. And I put this ring on as a reminder that I have the Lord with me. You know what I mean? And the moment that I got it, I have not taken it off. Like if I pull it off my finger, you'll see the tan lines of summer and all of these things. Like I have not taken this ring off because I know in my heart of hearts, I just wanted to focus on the kingdom. I wanted to focus on the Lord. And so I did that. Now, fast forward. Those are all prior to 2024 things, except the things at the beginning of the year. And so, I ended up meeting my now fiance at church. He felt that the Lord wanted him to serve, and so he signed up to serve in our ministry, which I do, our young adult ministry at our church. And honestly, I did not think much of it. Like again, when we met, it's not like sparks were flying and, you know, all of these grand things were happening. It was just, how can I get you connected? How can I get you to serve? You know what I mean? And it's so weird. And if you've listened to our previous video with me and him together, he will tell you guys that one of the first things that he said was that he was here to serve me. He just felt like there was a need to help me in ministry. Now, I have been a single adult in ministry for most of my entire life. The last 4 years that I have been leading in the capacity at which I've been leading, I have been leading as a single woman, which also came with different challenges. And so when he was like, I'm just here to help, I'm here to serve, but it wasn't necessarily serve like, I don't know. It was just a way that he would say things of like, how can I help you? And this man showed up every week. How can I help you? How can I help you? And then it started getting to like the personal side. We started becoming friends, and it was very clear that he had attention for me, if that makes sense. I would talk about things that were frustrating me with friend groups and church and every capacity in my life. And he would automatically be like, well, how are you taking care of yourself? How can we help make your life easier? You know what I mean? And so, in a way, I did start to see what God told me the year prior of starting to feel seen. And as we became friends more and more, it became very clear that this man sees me. Like if we were standing in the middle of New York City on New Year's Eve and there's a million people, like, I know this man's eyes would only see me. And so I began to feel what the Lord had spoken over me. And so, mind you, that was just one of several words and confirmations that I began having as I started dating him. Even as me and Sean started to get to know each other and started dating, I had to really be intentional about praying. Like, I'm telling you, I had to fast and pray. I had to really seek the Lord because it's scary sometimes as an adult who desires marriage to know if you're making the right decision. I think that's a question that so many people tend to have of like, Lord, is this the right person? Lord, am I making the right decision? And it really had to boil down to the Christian side of things, as I will say, or the spiritual side of things, is I had to really ask myself, how much does this man love the Lord and how much can he love me? And so instead of critiquing all the little flaws, because we are all broken, flawed human beings, like every single one of us, there are things that Sean brings as baggage to our relationship, and there are plenty of things, and I mean plenty of things that I bring as baggage into a relationship. And so I had to really be intentional about, God, does this man love you? Does he serve you? Does he surrender his life to you? Because I have dated guys in the past that would say that they were a Christian, but they didn't live it. They didn't have any fruits. And so that was one of my top things, is I had to see the fruit. And time again, I began to see the fruit of the Lord working in Sean's life, whether that be from his patience to how kind and generous he was with me, to his servant heart towards me. Like, there were so many things that just confirmed that God was at work in this man's heart, and I could not ignore that. And if I'm being truthful, I have always dated the bad guys. I have always dated the pretty guys that, like, honestly treated me like crap. And so Sean is also very pretty. I'm just giving context. But I had to really like bring it to the Lord of like, God, I don't want to date another Christian boy. I want to date a man of God. And so Sean has his house in order. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't kind of playing games. Like he was very intentional from the start of like, hey, if we step into this, like it's with the intention of marriage. I understand that like it may not work out even as we're dating, but we're that's where I'm going with this. Like it's not a play thing. And if I'm being very transparent, when I first was brought to this idea of like, obviously Sean was the one that pursued me first and asked me out and all these great things, but I had a little bit of play in me still where I was like, well, I don't want to like really date like publicly, like be serious, but like we can play. And from the get-go, like play around as mean like flirty friends, blah blah blah. But from the get-go, this man was like, yeah, no, I'm not interested. He's like, if you want someone to play with, like I'm not your guy. And that's when I knew like he was serious about life and things and dating, and I actually had to mature and step up and be like, okay, God, let me not miss what you're putting in front of me. As we started dating, I somewhat was very anxious again of like, God, what is this, like what is it that you have, etc., etc. And I had to pray that God would give me a supernatural peace. And a couple of months into us dating privately, because we dated privately before we announced it to anyone. The only people that really knew that we were dating were honestly like two close friends of mine and then my pastors. We did not tell anyone when we started dating, because if it did not work out, I did not want to deal with like the backlash of obviously both of us serving in ministry. As our young adults pastor, it's important to me to not bring around like a bunch of guys that I'm dating in front of, our young adults, because I want to lead by example. And so I did not even introduce Sean as like someone I was dating, even though he was there. We did not publicly announce that until way later on. And so as we were dating privately, I really felt that God gave me what I had asked for, which was a supernatural peace that came with it's okay. And so I really got the okay from the Holy Spirit when I started, because I was anxious, guys. Like when we first started dating, every little thing would make me so anxious with him. And he can tell you, to the point where he was like, calm down, like it's okay. And I'm just like, no, because I worry about everything all the time. Like, what's the future going to look like? What's this going to look like if we move forward? Like I worried about every little detail. And I remember one day just like taking a walk with the Lord and experiencing this peace like I never have before. And from that moment on, I was more than secure in knowing that this man would be my husband. I never questioned his intentions towards me anymore. I never questioned if there was other women involved. Like I knew in my heart of hearts that God was saying it's time. And that's actually the word that I got, like it's time. You know what I mean? And so after I had that peace, there was truly nothing that shook me anymore from the relationship. Like I was like, okay, like here we go, we're stepping into this, we're gonna honor the Lord, we're gonna honor each other, and just see what else God does. And honestly, that has been how I've known like this is all it, all of the pieces started working together. And granted, again, there's no such thing as a perfect relationship, there's no such thing as a perfect marriage. You only have two sinners who are striving after the Lord, two sinners, two broken people who are striving towards holiness. And something that I've always told Sean is that as long as he continues to pursue the Lord, I promise I will be right behind him, holding his hand in this journey. And ever since, God has just been doing incredible things. We have seen so much growth in ministry. We have seen growth in each other as individuals, and even growth in our relationship. And that's a whole nother story to tell. But honestly, there's still not a day that I'm not on my knees praying before the Lord of decisions that I'm making, that decisions that we're making together as we enter marriage in 2025. Like it has been a whirlwind, an absolute whirlwind of things and emotions, but God nonetheless has taken care of every single thing. Even in some of the warfare both of us have experienced as an engaged couple, because that truly is a thing. I have cried many tears. I have cried long nights. But at the end of the day, I have hope knowing what it is that God has told me, what he has spoken over me. And so it's a journey of surrendering to the Lord. there have been even times where I'm like, God, if this is not it, like, I'm okay if you take it away. We're gonna make do. You know what I mean? And I think God honors that. He honors the obedience that has been coming from this. And honestly, again, we're just two imperfect people choosing to serve the Lord. And at the end of the day, when I look at the scriptures, when I look at when God created Adam and Eve, and he said, this woman is to be your helper. I know that I am his help. I know that he is my helper. And that is the best thing for us, is knowing that we're here to help each other. We're here to help each other grow spiritually. We're here to help each other grow in the things of the Lord that like God has individually called us to in our ministries, but also, again, just like growing together. And it's been such a hard and beautiful process. And I am excited for what's to come. And so if you're a single person, I would encourage you to truly focus on the Lord, because there are so many great things that you're probably missing because you're so focused on when God is sending you someone. When am I gonna meet him? Like, I was like that. There were so many times where it was just like I would meet people and I'm like, could this be my husband, Lord? Could that be my husband, Lord? You know, and it wasn't until I really just like, God, I just give it all to you. I just surrender everything to you, that I think it changed. And it wasn't change on my own doing. Like, me and Sean were friends for cool minute before we decided to pursue each other. Honestly, we didn't even like each other. It was just like one day God said, look up. And I can say that because Sean has been at our church for like 8 years. And again, I've been at our church for 4 years. I've seen pictures of him at events at our church. And I was at these same events and I have never noticed him. It truly was two people just focused on serving the Lord, doing what God has called us to do. And God said, now you can look up. And here we are. So I hope that's encouraging. I hope that gives you guys a little glimpse into our story and vulnerability into our lives as we navigate, again, being engaged, because it is very interesting. It is very interesting. Anyways, if you guys like this video, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe for more content coming in 2025. If you are listening via podcast, thank you for joining us today. I am so honored to be able to share my story with you guys and do life with you guys, because I truly believe that there is nothing better than community together when there are people that are just loving the Lord and building genuine friendship and connections. And so I'm so honored that I get to do that with you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.